Hi, everybody. This is Patrick Zielbauer from Infinity Futures. It is 3:30 on Monday, January 15th. Thank you for coming to the presentation today. I'm going to go through some risk stuff, and then we'll just jump right into it. There's a few things that I want to make sure we cover here, and we might have a slightly abbreviated session because of the holiday, but that remains to be seen. Trading futures, options on futures, and retail off-exchange foreign currency transactions involve substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you in light of your circumstances, knowledge, and financial resources. You may lose all or more of your initial investment. Opinions, market data, and recommendations are subject to change at any time. Past performance is not indicative of future results. So, folks, only fund a futures account with risk capital. That means money you can afford to lose without lengthening your retirement horizon or affecting your lifestyle. Okay, if you have any questions about where you may fall on the risk capital curve, so to speak, whether this is appropriate for you or not, that sort of thing, please do feel free to have a discussion with your representative in our office about that. We will not sugarcoat risk. We talk very plainly and objectively about it, and we'd be happy to have that discussion with you. Okay? Again, my name is Patrick Zielbauer, and we are going to be doing these presentations that focus on Sierra Chart every Monday, except for holidays, which I guess we sort of missed the boat on that one today. But I'm glad you're all here because this is only the second one of the year. But I do plan to do these more actively throughout the year, this year, and really educate people, and hopefully, we can all learn from each other as well. All right. What you should be seeing right now, Peter and everybody else, is a web browser with some charts in the background. If you're not seeing that, you may want to go in and out. It should be being broadcast. Can everybody see the screen? Can you confirm with me that you can see the screen? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the screen's good, Peter, so jump out and back in. Okay, thanks, guys and gals. Okay, so without further ado, let's kind of get into it. I want to explain a couple things about what we're going to talk about, and we're going to go through a couple of relatively simple examples. But before I do, what I want to touch on this because this is something we talked about last week, and I would like for the people who are relatively new to understand the purpose of this discussion with respect to this radar screen is what I'm calling it. Some other places have used that term. It's a function inside Sierra called the study summary. It's this window, okay? And basically this looks like a quote board that you might expect where you can see a last price and the daily change, high, low, that sort of thing. But what you can also do is you can also display conditions. And a condition could be one indicator being up or down. It could be one line being above another line or below another line, something crossing something else. It really could be anything, anything that you can define with math. And one of the things that's really neat about the study summary is it allows you to basically broadcast those conditions into this grid format so that you can see when something is happening. So why would you want to do this? Well, for me, it's about simplicity. I'm going to say, everyone has heard me say this before. I really do believe that there is a tangible benefit that can be realized by self-directed traders who are willing to pare down the amount of data that they're forcing themselves to process all the time. And that could mean too many charts, too many indicators, too many time frames, too many third-party services, whatever. I think trading brings to the forefront, to the surface, very quickly negative aspects of our personalities, like the need for instant gratification, lack of patience, lack of discipline, and it happens really fast in trading. That process happens quicker than in other professions, I believe. And so one of the things I always strive to do with these events is show people that it is possible to sort of pare down the amount of data that you're looking for, and you can use these data points in dramatically different ways. I'm going to talk about what's on the screen now, and then I'm going to make a comment that is related to what I just said a minute ago about how different people use this differently. And then we're going to do an example about how to code a basic alert in Sierra and then how to make it display in this format. Okay, so what we're seeing in the background is a bunch of charts, different markets, all 60-minute time frame with the Ichimoku cloud. So for those of you who are familiar, the cloud studies it's like a momentum, trend combination of studies that are built into Sierra. And basically, one of the simplest way to say this is that the market could be above, in, or below the cloud. And the cloud is this bluish thing here. Okay? So if it's in the cloud, the argument is that there's indecision about the market and the trend that it's in. If it's below, it's down. If it's above, it's up. All right, pretty self-explanatory. But what this screen does is this screen changes color based on whether the market is in, above, or below the cloud. So if it's above the cloud, then it's blue. If it's below the cloud, then it's red. And if it's in the cloud, then it's gray. So that's the format. We're going to, and I will give you an example of how we can create these color background things. That's going to be part of the presentation today. But the idea here is that very quickly you can look at the chart and you can know that if the market is in, above, or below the cloud, assuming that's a piece of data that you're interested in. But what you can also do is you can broadcast that data into this format here. And so right now, not ironically, but strangely, all the markets appear to be above their cloud. So everything is blue. None of the other ones are highlighted. So it doesn't usually happen. But in this case, I guess everything has been up last few days, so this would make sense. So that's what we're seeing here, is we're seeing basically a heads up. When we look at this screen, we don't necessarily need to be even looking at the chart to know whether or not the market is in, at, or above, or below the cloud. So why would something like this be useful? Well, traders have unique, fall into similar pitfalls. They do it in different ways, often very unique ways, but one thing that is an example that I can convey based on my experience with my customers, and we talked about it a bit last week, is that traders have a tendency to want to be short the market. Why do traders want to be short the market? It goes down faster than it goes up, makes them feel confident, like they know something that the rest of the world doesn't know. There's lots of reasons, why people like to be short. And basically, traders in uptrending markets like what we've seen here, it's difficult to be short without getting your head ripped off over and over again. And so one of the things that I had in mind here for certain customers of mine was to, if they use the cloud or are interested in the cloud and determining trend as a basic qualifier, why not stay away from markets, going short markets that are above the cloud? It's a really, really simple operator. And so in this case, in this situation here, with everything being above the cloud, that means there would be no trade opportunity to the downside, which is fine. I mean, sometimes the best trade is no trade or no position or standing aside. So the idea here would be that if you knew that you had a tendency to get run over in upward trending markets and you saw a short signal come to pass on your chart, you could look here and see if the market is above the cloud. And if the market is above the cloud, you may not take the trade. You probably will miss trades, good trades, as a result of that. But the general idea is that you're trying to find ways to keep yourself out of the market in the wrong direction of a trending market. And this is an example of a way that you could use this to act as a qualifier to even consider a position and perhaps keep you out of some bad ones. Other people might use it a little differently, where they're looking for very specific conditions, like something crossing something else, being above or below something else, something happening a few times in a row, that sort of thing. We're going to demonstrate some of those as well. So some people use it really as just hey, I want to know what market has an 834 EMA crossover happening right now. That's a perfectly fine way to use this system. But another way to do it is to create filters to keep you out of trouble. And most traders, as their career has gone on, do understand the scenarios that tend to get them in the most trouble. And one of the most common ones is going short in an upward trending market. So that's why I keep falling back on that example. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples here. Now, I've maximized the screen here. So I put the browser away. And what we should be seeing now is just the study summary here and all the charts in the background. Okay. Now what I'm going to do though is I'm going to start from scratch. So we're going to go to a brand new, what we call a chart book. And I'm going to give you some examples of how you can create these sorts of conditions inside Sierra. And then we will then take it a step further and put that resulting condition in this format. Okay. Alrighty. So firstly, just go to File, New Chart Book, and that's going to yield a new file. And I have a NASDAQ chart in here right now. So this is just a 5-minute chart of the NASDAQ. All right. Now in Sierra, when you add a study to the chart, the study gets an ID number and it gets what's called a subgraph or multiple subgraphs. So as an example, if you were to add a moving average, which we will do in a minute, it'll have an ID number of 1 because it's going to be the first study that we're adding to the screen. and the moving average itself will be subgraph 1. Now, thankfully, with a moving average, there's only one subgraph because there's only one line. But not every study has only one subgraph. Some have many, many subgraphs. As an example, if you were to add, say, a MACD, you might have one subgraph is the MACD itself, the other one is the moving average of the MACD, the other one is the differential, and then a zero line. So you might have 4 subgraphs, 5 subgraphs. So whenever you're using Sierra and you're trying to create these sorts of custom conditions, it's important to understand what ID number and subgraph number you're referring to. So a lot of times what I do is I use Notepad just to kind of run alongside some things here. I'm going to put this off the screen in just a minute here. But let's go ahead and add a moving average to the chart, and then I'll show you what we're talking about, and we'll go from there. Okay. Lawrence, so Sierra Chart is a program that Infinity Futures, our company, offers to self-directed traders. So this is not TradeStation. It's a good question. We compete with TradeStation. Okay, that's to be quite blunt. All right, so if I wanted to add a study here, I would just right-click on the chart and go to Studies, and then we're just going to select the study we want. Now, in this example, I'm going to add a study here that's called Moving Averages. Not just moving average, but moving averages. Because what that does is it basically puts 3 moving averages on the screen at the same time. So when you add the study, you've got an ID of 1 here, and each one of the studies is going to have a different ID number. Another place that you're going to see the ID number, which you will need to know, is if you go to Settings here, at the top it'll say ID, and then a number, colon a number. And in this case, with the moving averages study, there are some inputs. All right, I'm going to do, let's call it 2 moving averages, and I'll make them both exponential moving averages, 8 and 34 period. This one here, the moving average 3, I'm going to leave this at 15 as an SMA because I'm actually going to hide it so it won't be displayed. All right, so I'll leave that here. So I've got 8 and 34, EMA, EMA. In the subgraphs tab at the top, okay, we've already used that term. This is where you can see the number that is assigned to each subgraph. So the 8 EMA, the first one, average 1, is subgraph 1. The second one is subgraph 2. So when we refer to this study a little bit later, we're going to do it in this format. ID1.SG1 is going to be the 8 EMA, and then ID1, excuse me, it doesn't really matter if you use caps or not, I just like to be consistent. ID1.SG2 is the second moving average. Okay, so ID1.SG1 is our first moving average, and then ID1.SG2 is our second moving average. So when we are going to start to create these conditions, these are the values that we're looking for. So why do people do this? All right, for those of you who are new to Infinity or Sierra, people use these filters not just to make trading decisions, but to condense the amount of filters they're looking at in the market in terms of technical indicators into 1 or 2 alerts instead of 10 or 15. So for example, if you have like 6 to 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or more different things that you look at, that you're waiting for those things to line up before you get into a position, what this can let you do is combine those things. It doesn't work in every single case, but it works in a lot of cases. Combine those things into one single alert. So it's not an effort to transform you as a self-directed trader making your own decisions into like a robotic, if it's green, buy, if it's sell, if it's red, sell, although some people could do that. That's not the point. The point is to get you to that intuitive decision-making position right before, the one that happens right before you put the trade on, a little quicker. And also to reduce the amount of decision fatigue that you may suffer by having these 10 or 12 filters on the screen across all the markets and all the time frames you have all day long. Many of you probably feel fried, by 9 o'clock in the morning, depending on who you are and how long you've been doing this. So this is an effort to try to pare things down and clean up the screen a little bit. And it's also a neat way to let the software do some legwork. I mean, if you know how to do this kind of thing, it's kind of neat. I mean, you can be alerted when certain things are occurring that you might not catch on your own. So why not let it try? Okay, so that's why we do this. Okay, that's the short version of why we go through the effort to create these custom conditions. But in this case here, we've got ID1.SG1 and then ID1.SG2. Now, what I'm going to do now is apply it. We're going to see those lines show up, so that looks normal. And then I'm going to add another study called the color background based on alert condition study. Color background based on alert condition. So there's one question that usually comes up right away, and that is, if the condition is true or false, or true or if the condition is true, can I do something other than color the background? Can I color the bar, or can I put a star or an arrow or something like that? The answer is yes to all of those things, but if you want to be able to port this signal onto that study summary window we were talking about, you have to use the color background based on alert condition study. Okay, so you've got to use this one if you want this, the result of the study, the test, to be visible in the study summary. All right, so now we've added the color background based on alert condition study to the chart. And what we're going to do is go into settings, and this alert tab up here, this is where we're going to type in the condition that we're looking for. There are several of these conditions. We're going to go through several of them today that are automatically built into Sierra. I like to call them operators. All right, so operators could be a numerical, like greater than, less than, addition, subtraction, division, that sort of thing. Or there are some that Sierra uses, like cross from above, cross from below with respect to lines, or cross over if you don't really care about the direction of the cross. So in this case here, I'm going to use cross from below. And cross from below basically says we want to know when the first subgraph that I list here crosses the second one from underneath. All right, so that's the condition we're going to look for. So the way that you would write something like that, and we can use our notepad here as an actual notepad and copy paste out of it. This is what I do a lot. Is it's going to look something like this: cross from below, and then you open parentheses, and then you do the first line, id1.sg1, comma id1.sg2, the second one, and then close parentheses. So this is the condition. So you can imagine that as you start to have several conditions, this text string gets longer and longer. And if you were to just look at it as a brand new user, it can be intimidating. It's like, how the heck did he or she code that quickly? But when you start to think about what each of these things represents, and the fact that this is all very piecemeal, it's just one condition at a time until we've got them all in there, it will become less intimidating very quickly. So all I'm going to do here is copy this text. I'll just paste it right into here and push apply. And right away, we're going to get a result. And we are going to now be notified when the 8 EMA is crossing the 34 EMA from underneath. All right, so for those of you who follow moving average crossovers, you could do this for obviously any combination of moving averages, 50 and 200, the death cross, as they say, whatever. But that's the first condition. And then what we'll do here, just to signify that this is kind of like a bullish signal, is we'll use a light blue color as the background, like that. Okay, so now we have our color background based on alert condition for our bullish crossover. Now another thing that you're going to want to do if you want these values to display in the study summary is you need to name them. So when we look at our studies window here, we just see color background based on alert condition. If we want to have this stuff port itself over into the study summary to build that radar screen appearance, this has to be a unique name. So the way that you name a study is by going to settings here and typing in a name here. So for example, I could call this one like bullish 834 and just push apply. And you'll see that that now takes over. So as far as the study summary is concerned, this is a unique study. It doesn't have to worry about adding the same one on accident as we add more of these, because each one is going to have a different name. All right, so we've now done our bullish crossover. So the next logical thing here to do would be, let's do a bearish one. So let's do the opposite. So what I'll do then is actually just duplicate the study. I do this all the time. It's a huge time saver. When I have something that is very similar to what I'm about to do again, instead of making it from scratch, I just duplicate it and then flip things around a little bit. All right, so I'll do that here. Just click on the study you want to duplicate, just push duplicate, like that. In the settings section, I'll go ahead and change the name here since we're all looking at that. I'll just call it bearish 834. We'll change the color to our, let's call this light red color. And then in the alerts, we're just going to change the below to above. So now we're getting the opposite behavior. When we push apply, we're going to see that happen right away. Cross from above, id1.sg1, comma, id1.sg2. So what happens is when you start doing this for long enough, you start to look at these as indicators. It's kind of like the matrix, you know? It doesn't take very long though, and there aren't that many operators. So the biggest trouble I think that people have with this is not the fact that they have to learn a little bit of syntax to do this properly. It's actually most people can't define their own strategy. It's all very loose and off the cuff. So this actually could be a productive task for you, is to sit down and go through the conditions that you're looking for before you get into a trade. And again, it doesn't mean you have to take the trade, but if there are a series of conditions that in general yield a high probability setup for you, then those are the ones we want to put in here. So this kind of forces you to inventory your decision-making process, and that's one of the things that we alluded to in the description of the event. All right, so cross from above, id1.sg1, comma, id1.sg2. All right, now we're going to do other examples on the charts too, but before we do, I would like to show you how to actually get this into the study summary so you know how to do it once, because once you do it once, it's pretty much the same for any custom study that you build like this. All right, so all we're going to do is go up to File and select Study Summary or Open Study Summary window. It's right up here, Open Study Summary window, and it's going to look like this. Now, there's going to be some fields in here that we can adjust. We can change all these things. Some people like to have the regular quote information in here. I am one of those people because I don't find the need to have a separate window up for quotes anymore. I don't really use the quote board that much anymore. It's something we used to talk about all the time, and instead I use this. If you don't care for this data, again, pare down the amount of data that's on the screen if possible. Go to Settings and uncheck this option that says Display Daily Quote Data Fields. If you do that, it goes away, and really all you get is your study, which is great because maybe that's all you need. All right, so I'm going to keep them in here for now, but if you don't want them, you can take them off very easily. You'll notice also that there are other choices in here that are relevant. If you want to see the study name at the top here, I generally probably will want that. Okay, you can see this up here. That's under Settings, Display Study Names. And then another thing that will come in handy is always visible across chart books. So what that does, if I check that, that means that I could be looking at my cloud, but I'm still seeing my 834 crossover study summary. So that's useful because that means that you don't necessarily have to be on this chart all the time. You could just be waiting for the signal to happen. All right, so you could be just waiting. You're looking at your other charts, and all of a sudden you happen to have this up and you're looking at it and you can see your condition come through without ever even looking at this chart. It could just be running in the background. So it's got to be running, but it doesn't have to be visible. Okay? In terms of other aspects of this, we'll come back here as it becomes necessary, but most of what you'll find is going to be under the settings section. So if you're looking for something related to the study summary, odds are it's in there. Okay, now there also might be situations where you don't want certain parts of a study or studies displayed in the study summary. One thing you might notice right off the top, very quickly, is that the moving averages aren't in here. All right, why not? The reason why the moving averages are not visible is if I go to Studies here and go to Moving Averages, click on Settings, there's an option in here that says Include in Study Summary. So if I check that box and push Apply, then they're going to come up there. They're not showing up right now because there's actually the ability to individually take pieces of a study out. I'm going to put this back to the way it would look if we were sort of by default. It would look like this. So we've got the two moving averages with the same colors that are on the chart. All right, but in my case here, if I'm giving you an example that that we're trying to make progress on with respect to paring stuff down, I don't really necessarily need to even have these up here. All I care about is the crossover. I don't care about the value. So if you want to take a study out of the study summary or a piece of a study out of the study summary, you go to the studies window, click on the moving averages. If you want to take it out altogether, you can uncheck Include in Study Summary. If you want to take out a certain subgraph, you can do that from this checkbox right here. So let's say that I only want to take off the ADMA for some reason. I could apply that. okay, and you can see that it goes away off the study summary. All right, so again, if you want to take the whole thing out, just uncheck it here. Okay, if you want to take only pieces of it out, you can uncheck it here. All right, so it allows you to drill down pretty well. All right. Harry, is there a way to blank out to not see the zeros? I don't think there's a way to do that just yet. I think there might be a way to do that in ASCIL, which is like if you actually want to do real programming in Sierra. I'm not 100% certain if there's a way to do that without actually doing some development work. All right, but I try to avoid that because, as you know, I'm not a developer, and most of my clients aren't either. All right, so does anybody have any questions yet on just the process of getting a study into the study summary, or anyone need me to explain the purpose of such a window? Okay, if you do, let's ask now, because now we're going to move into some other stuff. Erica asked, when is the webinar going to be posted on the Sierra website? It won't be posted on the Sierra website, Erica. It will be posted on the Infinity Futures YouTube channel. Okay, so we will send everybody an email with a link to the recording, and then tomorrow or Wednesday, we will announce the topic for the next session next Monday. Okay. Okay, how did you access the study settings dialog box? Do you mean the window we just had up here a moment ago? Click on moving averages, settings, and then it's in the subgraphs tab. Sure thing, Erica. You're welcome. Emini Mom says, no, where your signals are showing up, the gray background. All the settings are, I mean, every setting you're looking for is going to be in this field here. Okay, so anything related to the study summary should be in here. Harry says, can we move the quote fields to the right of the studies? I don't think so. Actually, it looks like you might be able to. No, it doesn't look like you can do that. They're going to be in the order. They're going to show up in the order that they're in the studies window as well. All right, you can also sort them by clicking at the top here like this. I actually don't normally like to do that, so I usually like to check this option that says sort locked, so I don't accidentally click in a header up here and resort all the rows. Okay, the study summary is available from File, Open Study Summary window, right up there. That's how you get the window itself. All right. Okay, so now there's a couple things that we could demonstrate. One thing would be to add another study and display the study in here, or some custom study that we're looking for. Another thing would be to add the same exact set of conditions except for a different chart. So if you wanted to do the latter, just as an example, I could right click and duplicate this chart. And when I do that, I could just, it's going to be another NASDAQ chart. You see it automatically shows up here. There's a very easy way to change the symbol on the chart, and you'll see the text show up in the header of the window right up here. Okay, and all you do is do a / on your keyboard and then type in, say, ESH8, push enter. It'll change it to an ES chart, and you'll see the study summary changes as well. So this is going to automatically pull whatever charts you've got in this chart book into the study summary. So what you end up with is kind of like what I had with the cloud, where I have all these different charts open, and they're just being pulled in here automatically. So there's really nothing you need to do to add them in there. I'll turn off the always visible option here for a moment. Okay. All right, so let's move on. There's a few things I want to cover in terms of these operators. I want to give you a couple of other examples about how you can use these. Your question about the zigzag, if you could just drop that into an email and send it over. I don't want to jump into that now because it's going to take us down a whole different rabbit hole, and I want to try to stay focused. But I'm happy to answer, or at least research it for you, okay? All right, so what I'd like to do now is let's get rid of this S&P chart. I really just want to have the NASDAQ chart up here for the moment. I would like to add a different condition that we might be looking for. So one thing that's been really interesting in the market over the last few years is the obsession, and I don't necessarily think it's bad, with volume, trading volume. And it could be bid volume, it could be ask volume, it could be volume in general. But there are some really neat things you can do inside Sierra to test for volume related conditions. And I'd like to give you a very, very simple example. And the reason for the example is not because this is necessarily something you want to look at all the time, but I want to show you the mechanics of how we get there because it's going to be relevant in other situations. So the first thing I'm going to do here is add a new study to the chart, and I'm just going to add volume. So I'm going to scroll down here until we see volume. There's a lot of different volume studies. And just add it and push apply. So now we've got a volume study at the bottom of the screen. All right. Now, one thing that we might want to do is we might want to compare volume to, say, the volume in the prior bar or the volume in the prior X number of bars, something like that. And one thing that traders on a relatively short term like to do is look for spikes in volume. Now, this is a 5-minute chart. Today was MLK Day, so the market closed at 12. So it's not a very, it's not an ideal, day to be doing something like this. But we can still do it based on the volume we see here on Friday. And the idea here is what I would like to do is I would like to be notified, let's say, when the volume in the current bar is greater than the volume in the prior bar, and the volume in the prior bar is greater than the volume in the prior bar before that. So I'll show you how to do that. And basically what we're saying in plain English is we're looking for a market with increasing volume, for better or worse. All right, so here's how we would do something like that. So we're going to go to studies, and I'm going to add another color background based on alert condition study. All right, I'm going to put it at the bottom because I want it to show up on the far right here. So it's got to go to the bottom of the list. So we'll just add it. And then we need to think about a condition, or how to write the condition that we're talking about. So what I'd like to introduce here is ID4, which is the volume study. But I'd like to introduce a way for you to be able to refer to the same study except 1 bar ago in history or 2 bars ago in history. And so here's how we do that. So the first thing is, let's get our ID number and our subgraph straight. So I'm going to go to settings here, click on subgraphs. Fantastic. Volume only has 1 subgraph. So in my notepad here, as I'm writing this stuff down, I could say, okay, volume ID4.sg1, that's our volume. Piece of cake. All right, there's only 1 subgraph there. So the command that we were looking for is how to test for increasing volume. So basically what we want to know is if ID4.sg1, which is volume, is greater than ID4.sg1, 1 bar in history. So how do we do a condition like that? Well, it's actually very, very simple. All we do is use the regular identifier, the operator, ID4.sg1, which is the volume, is greater than ID4.sg1 with a -1 in brackets at the end, like this. So what this condition means is this is when volume is greater than volume 1 bar ago. So that is a very simple condition. We're looking for increase in volume from 1 bar to the next. So I'll copy that in our color background based on alert condition. Oops, wrong study there, sorry. We'll put this in the alert tab like that, and then apply. Okay, that's not very helpful, is it? Too many true responses. So and then we expected that because this is a very simple condition. But what we're going to do is we're going to add to this condition. So one thing that you can do in Sierra is you can use an AND or an OR operator to test for a certain condition. So in this case, we don't just want to know when the volume is greater than the volume 1 bar ago. We also want to know when the volume 1 bar ago was greater than the volume 1 bar before that one. So it's a very similar condition. I'm actually just going to copy this condition. All right, and then I'm going to replace the -1 here with a -2, and then this first one is going to need a -1 in brackets. So let's talk through why we did that. Okay, so the first condition is here, the volume is greater than the volume 1 bar ago, and then the second condition is here, the volume 1 bar ago is greater than the volume 2 bars ago. And then we could even do it a third time, like this. So now the volume 2 bars ago is greater than the volume 3 bars ago. All right, so this is how this would look, but we have several conditions now. So how do we tell the chart to test for all of them instead of just one? What we're going to do is we're going to separate each of these conditions with a comma and then put the whole thing in a giant parentheses with the word and in front. So when you have and then the parentheses, that means that everything inside the parentheses has to be true in order for the condition to be valid. All right, so what I could do here is just put these in one long row, separated by a comma. Like that. Doesn't matter if you use a space or not. I do just because it's easy for me visually, but you don't have to. And again, like I said, we're just going to put the whole thing in a giant parentheses. So and at the beginning, and then the condition. So I'll go ahead and copy this. We'll put it in here. And again, if you just came into the webinar right now and looked at this, this is why people can get confused. You know, this does take a little bit of explanation, but when you start to see it being built like this, it's like, oh, it's not too bad. You just have to learn a couple of these operators. So let's apply it, and now we can see we're getting far fewer conditions, which is what we wanted. So the color, of course, we can make an adjustment to. Let's just make it like this light green color for now. Oops, I just pushed the help button instead of the apply button there. Okay, and now we're seeing this behavior. Now, this chart is going to get cluttered looking, but this chart is going to serve a purpose because it's going to be showing us when all these things are happening. You don't necessarily need to be looking at this chart all the time, but you should also know that you can hide these conditions if you want to. You can hide anything in Sierra. So if you go to the studies to graph, you'll see there's a hide checkbox here on the right side. And if you want to hide the studies, the results, including the color background, you could just check the hide button and push apply. All right, now one thing you'll see is that when you do that, I'll just uncheck it. Look at it, it goes on and off of the study summary. All right, so there's an option in the settings section here called include hidden studies. So if I check that, okay, now I hide the result. It's still displayed on the study summary, but it's just not displayed on the chart. So it is possible to maintain a clean chart and still be able to test for all these things happening at the same time. All right, another thing we're going to want to do, which I omitted, was we want to name this. So I'm just going to call this, let's just call this Big Vol, like that. So that means we're seeing, so if we see that, if we were looking at this and this thing were to light up, that means that we're getting steadily increasing volume in this market. All right, so these are just my off-the-cuff ideas. You can start to see how this could be useful. I hope that's the goal. Is you can start to see, okay, well, you know, if the chart can tell me when this, you know, the things I normally look at, or I usually miss this NASDAQ trade or this gold trade because I can't get it all together in my mind fast enough. If you feel like you're in that camp, which a lot of people are, and a lot of people are and haven't figured that out yet, then I think this could be useful for you. And that's why we spend so much time on these ideas. All right, so we could actually replicate, you know, this to the downside. Let's duplicate it. I'll just call this small vol. And then we're just going to use negatives instead of positives. All right, nothing earth-shattering here. We are now testing for decreasing volume. Let's change the color so we've got something unique. All right, I'm going to unhide it for a second to see if it's been true at all lately. Yeah, it's been true a good amount. All right, and then we can just go back to hiding it. You can even hide the moving averages. Some people just want to see the crossover. If you really just want to clean things up, you don't necessarily have to have all this stuff on the screen. You know, just the values. The values are what you care about, and we can broadcast that here in a really concise and efficient way. All right. Okay, now a couple things I want to touch on as well that are related to this. So the most common operators are and an or. So when would we use an or condition? So an or condition could be used, one common use of an or condition is when you're looking at an oscillator and you want to know if it's above the higher level or below the lower level, but you really don't care whether it's above or below. So all you care about is that it's made an extreme move. It doesn't really matter as much the up or the downside. I'd like to demonstrate that here using something like a CCI, but I guess the concept could be the same, with a MACD or a stochastic or really any oscillator. And there's an infinite number of other uses of this. But let's use the CCI as an example. So I'm going to add my CCI, commodity channel index, right here, and just apply it. And I have mine defaulted to what's called region 2 here, so I'm actually going to change that to region 3, like this. So there's my CCI. And I have my level set kind of high, 200 and negative 200. So I'm looking for, kind of like an extreme move. 100 is usually the default setting. All right. Okay, so what we want to know now is we want to test for whether the CCI is, considered to be overbought, so to speak, or oversold, but not necessarily, we don't really care necessarily which one it is. So we're going to go through a similar process. We have the study on here now. Let's go ahead and add the color background based on alert condition. All right, now we have to figure out our subgraphs, right? So we're looking at ID 7. And this one is going to, might throw us for a little bit of a loop because there's more than one subgraph. So let's go to our notepad. Our CCI, excuse me, let's see the ID number first. So ID 7.sg1, that's our CCI. All right. This line 1, I usually have that hidden. Most people do. It could be like a moving average of the CCI or something. I usually leave that hidden. And then line 2, that's our upper line. So ID 7.sg3, that's the upper line. And then ID 7.sg4, that's our lower line. So what we want to know here is if the CCI is above the upper line or below the lower line. So how would we write that in a condition? Well, it's pretty simple. It's very similar to what we've done so far. We could say ID 7.sg1 is greater than ID 7.sg3. Okay, there's our upper condition. And then we'll just do a comma, and we'll just do the same thing again. And the CCI, and this time we'll use the lower line. So there's two conditions. The CCI is greater than the upper line and lower than the lower line. And all we're going to do here is put the word or in front, and again, a giant parentheses. So what that's telling us is the system is now going, the chart alert will now check to see if any of the things inside the parentheses are true. And if any of them are true, then the condition will be true. All right, so let's go ahead and highlight and copy paste this in here in our color backgrounds section, like that, and apply it. And you can see we're getting some true results. All right, here, etc. Colors. Let's just go for this light blue color, and then we will name the study 200 or negative 200 CCI. I don't know if it'll let me use a /, so I'll just do 200 or negative 200 CCI, and then let's hide it. Okay, so now we're being told, when that is true as well. So there aren't going to be situations, I think, where somebody's going to have a study summary that runs the entire length of the monitor that they're on, with all these conditions firing off. That defeats the purpose. Okay, we don't. I know I'm sort of stacking these up like this, but obviously I'm trying to demonstrate something. But you don't want to fall into that trap either, because there is no perfect setup. It's everything's shifting constantly, and we all know that. But the idea here is that you can consolidate a bit. You really can consolidate. Mike, the file menu does not contain a study summary option. You are probably on a bit of an outdated version, Mike, of the charts. So what I'd recommend you do is go to Help and select Download Current Version, and then let the update occur. That'll give you the current version of the program. Okay. Huge asks, can you change the volume bar color instead of the bar chart background? Yes, you can change the color of the bar. You could put a star or an alert somewhere. You can do all of that. But if you do that, you can't port the signal onto the study summary, which is kind of the point of this particular event. So I'm kind of focused on that right now. But you could do both. You could have two instances of a very similar study. One of them could be color bar based on, which is what you could use to color the volume bar. And then you could have the same exact condition on color background so that you can see that data in the study summary window. So oftentimes I will have the same study or the same condition on two different but similar studies. Let me show you an example of that. Let's see, where's the mode? Here we go. This is a chart that I frequently look at. Okay, it's a thing I follow that's based on value areas and so on. And I don't really see any true. Here's a true condition. So that's not a good one. But here's where you're seeing this is the condition. Is the market is breaking through the value area, which was here at the time, and the CCI is hitting a negative 200 level. So I'm getting this behavior. So on this chart, I have both the color bar and the color background alert condition with the same condition. The color bar condition is what's yielding the blue arrow, because you can use the color bar to do other things than just color the bar. You can also use other graphic notations. And then color background is creating the background color. So there are applications for using the same code, so to speak, in two different studies if necessary. All right. Okay. Okay, so we're moving along. There's a couple of other things that I want to display for you. And volume is kind of a good example of this. Although we did create a study for volume, the charting platform tracks certain properties or qualities of the market automatically that don't require you to use studies all the time. An example of that, and I'm going to bring up a web browser page here in a minute. These are called available main price graph identifiers, and I'm going to send this link out to everybody in here. So if you want to bookmark this, if you're interested in this sort of thing, this would be a great page to bookmark because it talks about these main price graph identifiers. Things like the high, the low, the volume, the bid volume, the ask volume. Those are probably the most common ones. The point is here is that if you wanted to use a condition that relied on the high, it would be kind of silly to have to add a study called high of the bar just to do that, right? So what Sierra has done is they've built a bunch of these in here by default. So open is the open, or O is the open, H for high, low for low, close for last price or current price, volume, and so on. So technically, we really didn't even need this volume study. We could have used the operator V instead of creating a study. But let's do one where we're getting like lower lows or higher highs as an example. Okay. So what I'll do here is I'm gonna because we don't need to add a study for this, you actually just go right ahead and add the color background based on alert condition study. So there's actually no separate study that this has to reference, but I'll put it in the notepad anyway, that H is going to be for high, right? L for low, C for current or closing price, basically the last price. Okay, V for volume, BV is bid volume, AV ask volume. These are the ones that most people use. Okay, and then open for okay. So these are the ones that most people tend to use. So let's do higher highs or lower lows first. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just use L for low. So in the color background study, you can go to the alert tab, and let's just say when the low is less than the low 1 bar ago. okay? And then we'll do the low 1 bar ago is less than the low 2 bars ago. And then I'll just copy this here again. The low 2 bars ago is lower than the low 3 bars ago. And then we'll just do a big AND condition like this. This would be a test for consecutively lower lows. Consecutively lower lows. I mean, there are useful applications to something like this, yes. All right, so let's do, this is going to look funny with that gray background, but let's call this lower lows. And then we can hide it. And then we could duplicate this study, although it requires a little bit of fidgeting. Go to settings, let's call this higher high. And then we do have to make some changes to this one. This one is going to be, these are going to be H's, and we have to flip them around. So this one we might have just done automatically, but in fact, I think I will. So we could say when the high is greater than the high 1 bar ago, and then the high 1 bar ago is greater than the high 2 bars ago, and then the high 2 bars ago greater than the high 3 bars ago. Big old parentheses. Okay, this one we're actually not seeing any conditions here just yet. Or any true results, rather. Unless you know what, did I have it hidden? Is that the reason? It is, probably. Yeah, plenty of them. So I had it hidden, that was the reason. So there's kind of our first taste of what a condition looks like when it's being true in real time. See how it's highlighted in green there? So this is the chart letting us know that the NASDAQ has made 3 consecutive higher highs. All right, I'll go ahead and hide that off the screen here just so it's not making us go blind, but you can start to see the, hopefully you can start to see the, the application here. Tanta, your question about can you do a condition when the volume has suddenly increased by a certain percentage? You can. So that's a good question, and you have to still refer to something. So you'd have to refer to either a number, a fixed number, or another bar's value, but you certainly could do that. So an example of that would be like this. Let's go ahead and use like the V for volume, like instead of using the volume study. So here's our color background study, and you could do something like the volume of the current bar is greater than or equal to the volume of the prior bar, let's say like that, times 1.1. So what that would, correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but what that would probably mean is that we're looking for over a 10% increase in volume in the current bar than the prior bar in order for this condition to be true. Let's make it 1.25. So one of the things about this program, folks, is that yeah, look at that. A little too many here. Maybe even a bigger number, like 3. So this means we need to see a significant increase in volume, 300% increase in volume. So let's call that vol spike. One of the things I was saying before I trailed off there was that in this program, if you have something you're looking to measure, more than likely you can create a condition like this on your own. You just have to be able to logically define your data points. You can't say, all right, put a line at support. Well, what does support mean? How is that, how is that determined? Okay, but things like moving averages, lines, anything like this that can be referred to, these are facts that the chart can interpret in a concise fashion for us. All right, so it's a really, to me, it's a really neat function. And ultimately what you end up with is once you have a series of conditions that really meets your needs, then you can start replicating the chart. Let's pare down this CCI here just a tad. This volume too. We don't even necessarily need these to be visible, but I guess we could keep them visible. And you can end up duplicating the chart a few times. Right click, duplicate chart, right click, duplicate chart, right click, duplicate chart. Go to the window menu. I like to use this tile as grid vertically option. Tile as grid vertically. Puts them like this because we got the NASDAQ here. Let's make that the S&P. So /ESH8. This one in the top right, we'll leave that as the NASDAQ. This one here, watch the header right up here. Okay, right up here. /YMH8. Enter. There's our Dow. Bottom right here, watch right up here. /RTYH8. That's the Russell. Now we've got our main stock indexes and all of our tests happening in real time. So you can see in the Russell, there's a couple of them true. So big volume and higher highs. Like that's interesting information for a trader to have. I don't care who you are. So the interpreting of this data, as fast as it is interpreted, is really where I think the usefulness comes from with this particular function in this program. And this Sierra is really a phenomenal application. I mean, for those of you who are not using it yet, give it a shot. I mean, it doesn't look like it was designed by Apple. We get that. User interface, graphic GUI, what is this? Graphical user interface. We understand it could be a little prettier, but who cares? It works. It's fast. It doesn't weigh down the system. And you can really do anything you want in this thing, with very few exceptions. And I don't think there's another program that exists where you can do as much as you can do in this program without having a development background, which I really think is important. Kent says a lot prettier than NT8. That's funny. Appreciate that, Kent. Thanks for looking at our stuff recently, by the way. I may have called you today. Or yesterday. Or not yesterday, last week. Okay. Okay, guys. Well, I think that's probably where I will leave it for now. The main things I wanted to get across here were the mechanics of actually getting the study summary up and how to display something in it properly. And also I wanted to talk about some of the more basic operators, which really are the only ones I really ever use. And, or, and then the greater than, less than, as well as the ability to use the bracket with the negative number to look at prior bars in history. So, getting that information into this format is not difficult. Remember, once you have a study summary that is looking good, you don't necessarily need to be on this chart all the time, right? Or on this chart book. You can go to settings, always visible across chart books. And that way, if I go into my cloud scanner or if I go into my value or area breach project, I can still see all this stuff happening because it's being calculated in the background. All right. So if anybody wants a copy of these files, especially the one we just did, this is a great way to learn and work backwards. All you need to do is email your representative in our office. I will send everybody that works here these files here as soon as we wrap up the webinar. Get them from your rep. They'll show you how to import them, what folder they have to go into. And then you can use this in combination with the recording, which will be up on YouTube within a day or so. So Sam, yes, obviously there will be there will be a recording up there, and you're welcome to watch that and watch the other ones as well. We had a pretty good one last week. In addition. Okay. All right. Anything else right off the top of your head that I can answer while we're here? And also, if we want to, if anybody has any ideas or topics for upcoming presentations, please feel free to send those to your rep also, because those go into a big pot, and then that's a lot of times that kind of interest is what drives these topics, in addition to the developments that Sierra is doing, which are pretty much constant. But we're certainly interested in your input and your feedback as well. All right. Edie, that's kind of you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Peter, your question, yes. Can you place a 15-minute study onto a 5-minute chart? You can do that. you really just do it using the study price overlay, Peter. I think maybe we'll talk about that study. That's actually a good topic. We haven't done one on that. Maybe I'll discuss that next week. But you certainly can put a study from one time frame onto another chart of the same market or a different market, same time frame or different time frame. Just bear in mind that when you're looking at like a 15-minute study and you put it on a 5-minute chart, it's going to be flat every 3 bars. So it might look a little funny, but if really what you care about is the value of the line being breached, then there are ways to utilize, for example, what we've done here today without necessarily even having that line visible, Peter, right? But if you really do need to see the line, it certainly can be done using the study price overlay study. But it's not going to look like a normal line because for every 15-minute bar, there's 3 5-minute bars, right? So it'll look a little strange, but it's doable. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and read some risk stuff here one more time, and hopefully you find it useful. Please tell your friends. One thing that we've noticed is that we're getting people registering for this webinar that are not in our system. That's awesome, guys. Thank you for doing that. That means that you're forwarding the email to your friends or your trading buddies or whatever. We believe we have a significant value add with this program, and we certainly love the opportunity to earn your referral business. It's huge for us. And the more referrals we get, the more time that I can put towards doing fun stuff like this. So we really do appreciate that. All right, wonderful. Thank you again. Everybody have a great afternoon and a great rest of the week. It's going to be a busy week, I think, so get ready. Keep your head screwed on nice and tight, and let us know if we can help you. Have a great day. Thank you, folks. All right, trading futures, options on futures, and retail off-exchange foreign currency transactions involve substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you in light of your circumstances, knowledge, and financial resources. You may lose all or more of your initial investment. Opinions, market data, and recommendations are subject to change at any time. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great night. See you next time.